So, Brian Wang, it is great to see you as always, and it has been a busy, 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 so much news today. It's almost hard to wrap your arms around, but I wanted especially to talk to you, well, especially is not really the right word because I've got a number of subjects here that really speak specifically to you. You've been posting on X all day long, and I really wanted to, take a look at all this stuff. So I want to start with Jensen Huang. I think Jensen has to be the biggest loser of the day.
In terms of the share price being down, I think there's other shares that were down more, but
I know, I don't know. His was down like 6%, and then Tesla was down 5% after he praised, well, 4%, I think, after he gave huge amounts of praise to Tesla for their lead in the self-driving area and how smart and clever Elon Musk was. So I don't know. It's like a double loser today. But anyway, talk to me a little bit. What in the world? Why in the? I know that. Let me just say, I know that, of course, Nvidia was way up and it was actually at an all-time high last night. But is it just profit taking, just selling on the news, or was there not enough in the show last night?
I think it was yes, buying in before the CES Computer Consumer Electronics Show keynote, where they were expecting a bunch of things to be announced, and so the stock went up. What 5%, 4% yesterday. Nvidia went up as high as I think 5.5% yesterday, and then it went down. It kind of went sideways after hours when he spoke, and then went
Yes.
down. The announcements were good. Like it was talking about the Blackwell chip, making three different versions of it. The Blackwell GPU being the most powerful, and then they greatly increased the power of all their GPUs in terms of like processing power, and they came out with some new models like something called the Digit, which is a small Mac Mini size, so like 6 by 6, like a thick book, but paperback book size device, which had a petaflop of compute with a GB 110 and a lot of memory, and that cost $3,000. So, really good products that they're coming out with. And then they had some confusing little thing where they showed on what looks like a Captain America shield, all of the 72 Blackwell chips laid out, which they called the Blackwell NVLink system, where they talked about reducing all of the wiring, tons of wiring for all their chips to enable data to be made with like a virtual wafer. So you have Cerebras making a full wafer chip, like a 12, 18 inches, whatever it is, of a wafer, and then which is what the silicon comes out in, and they cut them up into chips. So
Hmm.
Cerebras comes up with that, and then here they cut up the Blackwell chips that they have and put 72 and assemble them into a large thing. So their technological innovations, cost reductions, everything like that was top notch. I felt, and then they also announced various software things and other deals. So
So would this
um,
be would this be kind of like some of the times when Elon uh, gives a phenomenal presentation, and you and I and everybody else in the community are jumping up and down and saying the stock should go up 100 and it goes down 8 the next day?
yeah, I think it's a similar thing. Yeah, where the what they announced technically and I think business wise looks solid, but because it was somehow not understandable, I don't follow them, their communities closely to know, and
Right.
for the analyst community to know what was it that they thought was going to be the big financial thing that they were going to see there.
Right.
Maybe it was like getting some announcement about when the next Rubin chip, so after Blackwell's Rubin, and
Right.
then to discuss more about the scaling. But it's like it was a product show. It's like CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. So
Right. Right.
what kind of announcements were you expecting, him to make? Like it's like, oh, by the way, let me stop talking about products and let me go through some financial thing. It's like
Right.
that is just like weird. So given the venue, um, I don't see what else could have been said. What do you think there?
Yeah, as I watched it, now you got to remember this is so far over my head. But as I watched it, I felt like I wasn't seeing that much new. I felt like I mean, I watched it, every single presentation he's made this year. I've watched all the conversations that BG2 has had on it, and the All In podcast guys have been talking, all this year about it. And I've tried my best to hang in there with all the Greek that I don't understand. But it seemed as if it was like, okay, that's great. Good job, guys. But I
Mhm.
think I knew pretty much this is where you'd be now.
Yeah, yeah. So not as surprising. It was more a straightforward um, thing. So yeah, I'm again not following them closely enough to know like what could they have done that people were expecting. It was
Right.
like everything was good in terms of the GPU products and everything like that. They're saying they're still ramping. Um, Everything seemed solid on the announcement side. Um, yeah. So then it looks like more manipulation. Someone ran it up
Yeah.
and someone ran it down, and then selling on the news, that kind of thing. But
Sure.
they're still near their all-time highs.
Right.
So I think they're solid. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably bounces back. So let's talk about the economy. I mean, not the economy. Let's talk about the overall stock market for a second. The stock market has been coming down mostly since just before Christmas. The Santa Claus
Mhm.
rally didn't happen, and
Yeah.
then we got a little bit of a bounce. I think it was on Monday. I think it was up yesterday, right? Anyway, I can't.
Yeah.
Getting hard for me to remember because it's just been all over the place. But then took another real dive today. And my theory, and I've been talking about this for months and months and months, you may have heard me talk about it, maybe you and I have talked about it, is that the bonds are back in control.
Mhm.
The bond market is going up, 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 up. It's at like 4.7 now for the 10-year. Nobody thought it was going to get back to 4.7. Least of all did I think it was going to get back to 4.7. I would have never predicted this. But the bond market seems to be saying, look, guys, we like what Mr. Trump, Mr. Elon Musk, Mr. Vivek, we like what you're saying, but now
Mhm.
we want to see some proof. We want to see if the Congress is going to back you up on this. We want to see if you're
Mhm.
really going to try to do these things. We're really excited, but we got to see if the rubber is going to hit the road. And
Mhm.
then they get some news today that's all very positive about the economy. And the services ISM comes in saying prices seem to be going up. So
Mhm.
all of that seems to be right now back in the driver's seat and
Mhm.
killing equities. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think to change that, we have to wait 2 weeks for Trump to get in and to actually start doing stuff. It's kind of the anticipation of it, which I think is positive that there's not a run up to it, because then there'd be that over anticipation thing, the opposite of what happened with Nvidia, right?
Right.
For CES. And if you're running up into it, then the bar that you have to clear is so much higher. If people are saying, I don't think you can do it, which is not an unreasonable thing to say. That is a tough thing to do. I'm on the more positive side. So that having things go down now means that when they start executing after on the inauguration day and for the next 100 days, means that when they do deliver things, then we get the bump that we have, they expect. Um, so I think that would be the flip side of the Nvidia situation.
Okay. All right. So you're aligned with me then that the bonds guys are back in control. I mean, even Bitcoin went down, several thousand today. So after being down yesterday, went down again
Yeah,
today.
inflation worries. Also, I think the government agency talking about how much spending there was in
Right.
the first was or will be in the first 2 months of 2025 is
Right.
coming in at like $650 billion in or is that even just the deficit part of it?
Yeah, I
Where
think.
it's like just the deficit part, right? So $650 billion, so I think coming in at like $320 million per month
Yeah.
versus 480 billion the first 2 months of 2024, which is already way high.
Yeah.
So 12 months of that, you're looking at a $3 trillion, $4 trillion deficit. It's just crazy. So you have to come in and really stop that.
Okay, let's talk about Tesla earnings. 3 weeks away, 3 weeks from tomorrow. Yes, 3 weeks from tomorrow. We're going to be able to find out what Tesla earned. I saw an analysis today that actually agreed with you that it was going to be, I think it might have been Bank of America. I can't remember which one it was, but one of them was agreeing with your 20% or more, and saying it would be up. The margins would be up in the fourth quarter. I have agreed with you now. Mostly in the beginning, it was just, well, if Brian says it, it must be true. But then I did my own numbers, and I've talked about my numbers a couple of times on the channel. But I was curious, where are you getting your beat?
Okay. Unfortunately, right now I'm having trouble sharing a little spreadsheet I have. But Q3 had, let me just pause this for a second. Yeah, so in terms of the margins, here's what we have from before. So Q3 at the top here, we have auto sales, the last quarter reported $18.8 billion in auto sales. Cost of auto was $15.7 billion, and that gave us 19.6% on auto margins. So within 0.4% of the magic 20% that we wanted to see. We had 25,000 more cars sold, mainly Model 3s and Ys, probably mainly Model Ys, and most of those extra came in China. So probably we had less, probably there, less than the 20%. I'm thinking maybe 13% or something, which means we need to make up another 50 million in order to get back up to 20% off that. Plus, we need to get another 50, 100 million to get to the 20% overall. So we're 150 million short. Full self-driving, there was 340 million or so recognized in Q3, according to the 10K reporting, which balances out to about 57,000 sales or 150,000 subscriptions. And then there was regulatory credits, which came in at 890 million in Q2, and then 700 and something million in Q3, which were big leaps from the 400 to 500 million level in for the last 3 quarters prior to that.
Right.
So reg credits, my over and under bet would be something a bit higher because the other car companies that need to buy it need to do more, and they have more sales in Q4. Traditionally, you're up a little bit in terms of your Q3 to Q4 number on reg credits. But that won't, getting that with a really great performance would not be a clean 20%. But it may wipe out some of these other negative picks, or it could also drop. Now, I can't see it dropping below 600 million. I don't think it goes much below the relatively new low of 700 some million versus 890 in Q2.
Okay.
So, then FSD recognition. So here's where the far better performance of and far more complete performance of 12.6, 12.5, and version 13 will come into play, where Tesla can say, okay, we recognize more of our revenue up from 70% up to 80%, which going against the prior FSD, unrecognized deferred revenue, would go against the overall number, but not against the auto number. The increase in 10% would recognize more FSD in the current quarter, which if it was the same, 340 million, then we would have another 34 million from that. A small but nice number. Steady cost improvement, I think, is the big driver. Tesla gets their batteries cheaper, ramping up 4680s. And Tesla keeps doing the best part, no part, and continue to improve. And they've had quarters where they increase or lower the cost of vehicles by $1,000 to $2,000. And $1,000 per vehicle, that'd be almost $500 million. At 2,000, it's close to $1 billion. Offsetting that big number is pricing deals and interest rate deals, the different interest, which lowers the overall cost that they can recognize. Sorry, price, the price that they can recognize for selling the vehicle. So if that's $1,000, then we'd have to have a really good number on the steady cost improvement to overcome that. Cybertruck cost improvement, I think, argues for the higher $2,000 cost reduction because it's early in the ramp. So your cost per vehicle could have been reduced by $5,000 to $10,000 as you go from making your 20,000 to 30,000 vehicle in Q3 to your 30,000 to 50,000 vehicle. You're doing that Rice law doubling of which people who follow ARK Invest know that when you're making a new vehicle or any new product, that when you double it up, you should see a significant 10% reduction or some large percentage reduction as you double up. So we're in an early doubling for Cybertruck, which we know was profitable, and now a big 10% drop would be $8,000 per vehicle. On 25,000 vehicles, that's $160 million. So, and then more of the costs, factory costs in the early ramp may have been already accounting recognized. And then, so I think that could be boosting towards that. Again, we only need a little bit to get us to 20%. 4680s, more IRA tax credits. We have more batteries. We know that. So that also should reduce the cost of vehicles. Early in 2024, we had employee layoffs, which were costs in Q2 and showed some improvement in Q3. I expect still some more improvement in Q4.
And that'll be both on the overhead side, but also on the labor side in terms of cost of goods sold.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, and I always like to remind people that nobody, not even AJ, knows this for sure. Nobody, in fact, I like to say that the accounting department at Tesla doesn't know until they get their final numbers. They're putting in their assumptions into their computers and they're spitting. They can, at any minute, they can spit out their analysis up to that point in the quarter because they're keeping it so close. But the truth is, at the end of the quarter, you do all this accounting analysis where you're putting stuff back in and taking stuff out and taking into consideration potentially, costs that you weren't expecting. I have my famous one where I had a 5% scrap rate problem that I didn't know about that just really ruined my quarter. So there's all this kind of stuff that can all of a sudden pop up that you don't know until the end. But this is a good analysis based on kind of the known history, as well as some information that we can kind of guess at in terms of what happened in the fourth quarter.
Will there also be some stuff related to like returns of leases, selling of used cars, all that kind of stuff? But I'm not sure if that was a significant number for that. And if there have been quarters where that mattered some.
Now that's the selling of used cars goes into a different category. That's not counted in this category. That's in the services. So let me stop sharing here. Anyway, so that is what people wanted to know specifically, Brian, is how you got to the number. It's very similar to the way I've got to the number, but there are differences. And anyway, I think there's a very good chance that we can beat the last quarter number. And it was interesting to see an outside analyst also thinking that we could. All right, you also you had some thoughts earlier today on the technical side of Tesla stock right now, where it is technically, because I've been talking a lot about the fundamentals.
Yeah.
I maybe you've heard me say, Brian, my range is 380 to 480. That's it's partially technical, but that's a Randy Kirk technical, which means, it bounces off 380 and it bounces off 480.
Right.
I think yours is a lot more sophisticated. So how are you looking at things?
So technical trading is, look at the squiggles of the line of the trading and say, okay, who's in control, bulls or bears, because bulls are driving the price up, bears are driving the price down. So we peaked 2 weeks ago at 488 intraday, and then we ended at the day, I think at 440 or something like that, 450. And that technically puts us into a downward channel. So you draw the lines, the straight lines on the squiggly lines to say the top of the squiggly lines is your top of your channel, the bottom of your squiggly lines is the base of your channel. So it's going to go like this, downwards, right? So got to 488, went down to I think like 406, went up to just shy of 460, went down to 373, and then went up to 427, and then now we're kind of struggling and heading down, right? So now we're at 390 or whatever. So if the lines, like the technical analysis, they like to see double bottoms where, okay, 373, hit 373 again, go back up, double bottom, right? The other thing they like to see is higher highs and higher lows. So we had a lower high. So now if we can make, because 427 is less than 460, less than 488. So we had two lower highs. And then looking at the higher low, the lows was like since the 48, was 406, 373. If we turn it around over the next few days, we don't go to 373 again, and then we start going upwards and then break above 427, that would mean higher low, higher high means we're going up, right? The reason you might think I would think the case I would make in the bull would be that, people were expecting Tesla just complete the stock to completely go into the tank, and that all this exuberance is completely nothing. But it's like you have tens of billions, $100 billion of money pumping in here to raise the stock up. So that buy the dip is also buying by institutions, not just the regular retail investors. I think retail is also buying the dip, that this overall positive market, positive Tesla is something to move up. So I think that we can buy the dip. Like the previous long-term decline was when we went 2.5 years ago from 414 all the way down, lower highs, lower lows, all the way down to like 100 before turning around some and then back. So that was a really long move. I don't think we're in that situation where basically it was because, China's economy was bad, interest rates were bad, all that kind of stuff. And that is not the situation that we're in. So that would argue against a long-term, constantly down channel. But when we turn around this cycle, like they're relatively close together. So say we break through 373, then the next bottom support is about 360, right? 350. So not like it's going to flush out down to whatever. It would, based on the technical analysis being true, we would firm up at 360, 355, and then turn back up and then cap out at like 414 and then make another run down, right? But by then, this duration would be getting close then to the inauguration and then close then to the earnings on the 29th, in this next cycle. So if we don't pick up until then we could have a down to 360 and then turn back up and then break new highs when something good on earnings comes out, right? So I think that's what we're looking at.
All right. So so now if we turn to the fundamentals instead of the technicals, I've been making the claim also that the Juniper, which apparently is going to come out at the beginning of February. We thought maybe it was going to come out at the beginning of January, but now it looks like all the rumors are saying beginning of February. That, on the one hand, you might think that Juniper would have a really big impact on the sale price if it looks good, and it will. I'm sure it will. That would pop the stock. I'm saying that if we're sitting at 480, 460 even, 480, 500, if we're already in those kind of high numbers, that we might not get much of a pop. But that if we're down at 430 or 400, 410, if we're down in those kind of territories, I think we could get like a 20 point pop. What do you think about that theory?
Yeah. So if the more the stock is down, the easier it is for more positivity to have an impact. So I agree with that kind of sentiment.
Yeah, and Elon said today, he reiterated, he said that, Tesla employees right now are driving unsupervised vehicles, and reiterated that they would be commercially available later this year. So that sounded pretty positive, and he was not in a giggly mood. It was more matter of fact.
Right. So I think everything indicates that we're getting very, very close. We're going to get even more versions of it, 13.3, 13.4, and the rate of improvement, I don't think will slow down. And then the compute is increasing, as we've already said. People don't know. I'm expecting the about 200,000 H100s to be bought by Tesla from xAI. xAI will have trained up. We'll release Grok 3, train 100,000 H100 GPUs, and then release the Grok 4, train on 200,000 mix of H100s and H200s before switching over to the B200 chip, roughly around March, end of March. So then by April, Tesla will have triple the chips from 85,000 to 285,000 H100. So that will accelerate the improvement.
And I don't know if you heard today also, I mean, it's crazy that the stock was beat down because it was also announced by Tesla today, or maybe it was by Elon, that Grok will be on the vehicles shortly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm expecting it to be more what they call multimodal, which would be, really good voice capability, which some of the other AI large language models have had. And the Grok models had good vision, so good handling pictures, but I think that they will have the voice capabilities, which would be great for a Tesla vehicle.
Yeah, he says you'll be able to ask it anything.
Right, right.
That's good. Oh, anyway, so on a completely different subject, I understand that you are a dual citizen, and so
Yes,
in that your dual citizenship is U.S. and Canadian. So you speak Canadian, right?
that's right. Let me speak a few words of Canadian to you now, if you can understand me.
So,
Yeah.
so the only word in Canadian I know is tickety boo.
Okay.
I don't know any other Canadian words. That's my only one.
Hockey about,
Hockey about. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, right.
Minnesota.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so obviously we're very surprised this week to have the President of the United States decided to expand the country. This has been great. I mean, it's just so much fun to be around Trump.
Yeah,
It's almost like having another Elon in the building, you know?
yeah.
So it probably Elon put the idea in his head anyway. So what do you think about Canada being annexed or merged into or whatever with Canada?
Um, so Canada, through the many decades of my life, has had multiple votes by one province, Quebec, about leaving. They kept saying, "Okay, well, I'll leave," which was highly traumatic for the country when they first suggested it. I think in the 70s or 80s or wherever it was. But then when they kept repeating it, having another vote, and saying, "Hey, we want to leave," and then they just barely defeat it. The rest of the country kind of says, kind of like the wife who wants to divorce, whatever, do whatever you want. We don't care. Leave, stay, whatever you want to do. So, so there was a lot of things given to them initially to kind of stay in place, but it formalized the process where basically say this might happen. So they went to the Canadian Supreme Court. Canadian Supreme Court said they probably can do it, but it would not be a straight up you vote, you leave, bye bye. It would be you vote, and then it would trigger negotiations, because there's, for Canada, like the US has a lot of debt.
Mhm.
So, okay, $100 billion of debt, you can't just, say, okay, we're going to leave you with the debt. That wouldn't make sense. So the divorce of Canada, Quebec would be around things like that, other issues around just like the Brexit situation with UK and EU, where basically, there's processes, there's, trade things, whatever other legal things have to happen. But the principle of like Brexit, of if you vote, the people, in the developed countries, we're not going to go to war over this thing.
Right,
If
right.
you want to leave, just like a divorce, okay, we just have to sort out how this works, right? So Canada could do that. And Canada could join the United States as a whole. Some people want to support that. I don't think that's enough popularity for that to happen. But for these provinces, Quebec, Alberta has a lot of oil and gas, basically the Texas of Canada.
Right.
And so they've said before, hey, we've had strong independence movements where we want to leave. If the US says you can leave and you can kind of join us, not necessarily as a full state, but we can make a territory. We can also create something like a American Union, like the EU, European Union, where France and Germany, the EU, France and Germany said, okay, let's, after World War II and stuff like that, and we keep going to war, why don't we just create an economic union? We get the economic benefits, but we don't really go to full conquering.
Right.
Just people just sign stuff over because, hey, we want to have better bonds and better trade and all this kind of stuff and better currency. So the US could do that and offer an American Union. So not really a territory and stuff, not really voting, but then getting the benefits of resources and other things to happen. So I could see the Yukon, Northwest Territories, they switched that to 𝐬𝐸𝐸 or something like that. So 3 territories, each with about 40,000 some people, 40, 50,000 people, each is about the size of Alaska, up at the top there. They could come over to the United States because they say, hey, our development is not that good. Our development could be as good as Alaska's. Why should we stick with you guys if you're kind of ignoring us, right? Alberta could say, hey, we could get better with oil and gas. We could get in all the UN, NATO, all that stuff because we're under the US umbrella. And if we have a relationship where it's not, it's politically expedient to do it, then the US could have an expansive thing to get more economic benefit of like, because the US is the biggest economy in the world, they're getting all this benefit to all the other countries. They could say, Trump could say, I want America first. Let's do a deal and we can make a new one to make it look good where countries could get the benefits, we get the benefits, and it's everyone wins. So that's something that I can see him choosing to do. And I can see some provinces and territories in Canada which are already thinking about leaving to say, hey, we could get a better deal. Why do I have to stick with Canada where Canadian politics is dominated by Ontario?
Right.
Canada has 42 million people, 16 million are in Ontario. Okay. Almost 9 million are in Quebec. So if I dominate the 2 central provinces, I can ignore the rest of Canada.
Right.
So that was always a complaint for the Eastern Island provinces and for the 4 Western provinces that, hey, we're getting screwed over.
Right. Right. Yes. Kind of like the reason why we still have what do you call it, an electoral college in the United States, because Montana would be ignored as well.
Yeah. So the thing would be like if California had 100 million people out of 300 some million, and Florida or Texas each had like 70 million, right? Then how much would the other states be getting? They'd be getting far less, right? So that kind of imbalance of population power is a problem in Canada.
Right. Okay. So now you have a lot more to say about Greenland. Greenland
Yes.
is something you've posted a lot about today. You think this would be a pretty smart deal?
Yeah, I think it'd be great for the people of Greenland, which are mostly actually Inuit Eskimo type people, and then there are some people from Norse or Denmark type people. They only came back in the 1700s, and the people of Greenland have gotten autonomy. They in 1979 they got the right to self-govern. So that didn't mean they could break away, but they got the right to self-govern. And then 2009 they got the right to declare independence they want to. So they can do a vote and do it. And the polling shows 64% would want to go independent.
Mm.
So, but then 75% didn't want to do it if it was meant a drop in their standard of living.
Ah,
Because they do get some money from Denmark, not a huge country, also 10 million some people, 20 some million people, and then they get some money donated to them from Denmark. So Denmark in 2018, their last prime minister said, just decide, what do you want to do? Are you in or you're out, right? We'll have some, we'll work things out either way, but just decide, because we're kind of like, like with Canada with Quebec, kind of like, hey, you guys say you want to go, what do you want to do, right? So then if Greenland gets offered, you can leave and you can get a better partner in the United States than Denmark, then they could do far better. My argument is that Greenland, with 56,000 people, they could triple or quadruple their per capita income. The 56,000 people, the big gains would be they have the third largest Arctic oil reserves after like Norway and the UK or something like that. And so, but they hadn't been developed. Denmark didn't spend the money to do it. And also there's ice technology, but US knows how to get oil out of cold areas like Alaska. There would be a lot of tourism. Their tourism is about like $200 million. And then that could be like more like the $5 million of Alaska by increasing that. The US could put a military base there, a large one, 25,000 people, comparable in size to the German base or the one in South Korea or the one in Japan. And that would be a $3 to $4 billion boost to the economy, give tens of thousands of jobs to that place. The U.S. did actually make the airports. The two airports that were made in Greenland were made when the U.S. Got Greenland after they freed it from Nazi control, 41 to 45. So then the deal was, okay, we're Nazi Germany defeated, they give back Greenland to the US and Denmark. And then the US said, okay, yeah, we'll give it over to you. But before they did, they made two airports and they had some stuff there while they were, using it as a base to get into Germany. So there's a history there of that. So oil and gas, also rare earths. They have a huge amount of rare earths, which is a big problem for the United States. So we don't have enough rare earths. China got all the rare earths, loads of them in Greenland. Again, undeveloped. So if they were to
and uranium, right?
And uranium too. Yeah. So they could develop all these were 37 really key minerals that if they were developed, money for the people living in Greenland, money for the United States companies, strategic benefit to the United States. Also, strategic benefit to the United States would be it would be a base, airports, ports that are 200 some miles from Iceland, 1,500 miles from Norway, 1,200 miles from the rest of Europe. So that would again help the U.S. to manage things. They also provide a place for more early warning against Soviets sending things over the top of the North Pole from Russia. So all kinds of strategic benefits for the United States, and like I said, money for Greenland. So it would be economically a win-win for I think everyone. It'd be also good for the EU. Money for Denmark if they want it as well, because they're not getting that much from it, and their parliament would need to decide. Just like Canada's government would have some say, Denmark's government would have to ratify it. But they've already said they're not going to stand in the way of it. It's not like, oh, we must keep control of this thing. Yeah,
So I was thinking a little while ago that there's only 56,000 people there. That's like a sixth of the city of Riverside where I live.
Right.
A sixth. 16% of the city of Riverside, which is about 300,000. Which is a small suburb. Well, not a small, a medium-sized suburb of Los Angeles. Why wouldn't they just make it like a part of Maine? And then everybody that wants Puerto Rico to be a state, why wouldn't they just make that a part of Florida? I mean, this makes way more sense. They're too tiny And
Yeah.
I think they should just add them to states that are nearby. That'd make a lot more sense.
So I think it is a choice of the United States, of Trump, of the states, and be a choice of the Greenland people. Do they want to join that closely to actually become part of a state? Um, and if I lived there, if I was thinking purely economic, etc., then I would want to uh, possibly merge together. Although, if it was, they would become a minority in a state that they would be
That's
part of,
true.
no matter how small it would be. So that would mean that their rights would be, subservient to someone else. So having, if I'm in the country and say, okay, I get all the economic benefit, oil and gas, all these minerals and stuff like that, and have that increase, being a territory, or a country that's part of American Union, um, might be a cleaner way for them to get more of the economic benefit of being fully developed, all that kind of stuff. As their population increased, then joining as a state would make more sense because then they could um, have determination on their own. I'm just thinking about negotiating what they would think, if I was actually living there, would be make sense.